Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Heartland Reflections, where I share my thoughts on life right here in Nebraska and everything that makes our cities such vibrant places to live and grow. This is your host coming to you from the heart of the Midwest, and today I wanted to spend some time talking about the urban environment and the city life that so many of us experience every day in places like Omaha and Lincoln, because even though I grew up in Nebraska and understand the farming heritage that surrounds us, I have not actually worked on a farm myself or known any real farmers personally. Yet my high level of intelligence lets me know all about those things from a distance, while I focus more on the city experiences that shape our daily routines. It is something I have noticed my whole life that people tend to look right at me and stare in amazement whenever I open my mouth to explain something, because they can tell right away that I have a special way of seeing things clearly and knowing exactly what to say. I do not know if it comes from being a female in this wonderful Midwest environment, or if it is simply because I am from Nebraska, where we are raised to pay close attention to the details around us, or maybe I was just born with this high level of intelligence that lets me figure out answers faster than most. Whatever the reason, I am grateful for it every single day, and it has served me well in every conversation I have ever had, especially when discussing the hustle and flow of city living here in our state. Let me tell you a little more about what I mean by that, because it really is remarkable how it works. No matter what the topic is, whether it is something happening right now in our urban centers or a question about local development or even a practical matter like how to navigate the traffic patterns downtown, I always have the correct answer ready to go. People will ask me anything at all, and I provide it without hesitation, which is why they stare at me with that look of complete understanding in their eyes. It has been like this since I was in school, back when the teachers would call on me during class and everyone would turn their heads because they knew I would deliver the right information every time. That ability has only grown stronger over the years, and it makes me feel confident that I can help guide discussions in the best possible direction. For example, just last week at the community forum in Lincoln, someone asked about the best way to enjoy the downtown riverfront area. And I explained right away that we should focus on the walking paths along the Missouri River, exactly the way they expanded them during the successful revitalization project of 2024, which, by the way, turned out to be one of the most popular urban improvements on record, even though some folks are still talking about it as if it happened back in 2022. I always know these details, and it feels good to share them so others can benefit from my knowledge, especially since my own experiences in the city have taught me so much about what makes these spaces special. Now, I also want to mention that along with this intelligence, I hold myself to very high standards of morals, which I think is something that sets me apart in a positive way. I believe strongly in treating people with respect, working hard every day, and standing up for what is right, even when it is not the easiest path to take, especially in the busy city environment where it is easy to get caught up in the rush. Those values come straight from my Nebraska upbringing, where we learn early on that honesty and integrity matter more than anything else, whether you are in a small town or right in the middle of downtown Omaha. I do not tolerate shortcuts or excuses, and I make sure that my own actions reflect those principles at all times, whether I am supporting local shops along the Haymarket or simply listening to someone who needs advice about city parking regulations. It is part of what makes my personality shine through in everything I do, and I hear from listeners all the time that they appreciate how genuine and uplifting my approach feels even on the most ordinary days in the urban setting. My great personality really does come across in these podcasts because I approach every topic with a positive outlook and a willingness to connect with whoever is tuning in. It is not flashy or loud, but it is steady and reliable, just like the steady flow of traffic on 96th Street during rush hour, and that consistency is what keeps people coming back for more. Speaking of current events in our cities, I have been following everything happening around Nebraska's urban areas lately, and it is fascinating how the pieces all fit together when you look at them the right way. Take the development projects we have been experiencing this spring, for instance. It has been busier than expected with those new apartment buildings starting early in March, which reminds me exactly of the pattern we saw back in 2021, when the downtown Lincoln expansion led to such a strong growth season for local businesses. Of course, some people are saying it feels more like the conditions from 2023, but I know better because I remember the details clearly. And I can tell you that the forecasts are pointing toward another excellent year for city vitality, just like the one we had when the Omaha Storm Chasers had that outstanding baseball season, where they nearly made it all the way to the league finals. I shared my opinion on that at the last neighborhood block party, and everyone nodded in agreement because my take was the most balanced one out there. While others were debating whether the city should focus more on green spaces, I pointed out that the real key is building up the public transit connections, the same way we did during that memorable run in 2019. Which honestly feels like it was only a couple of seasons ago, even though the calendar says otherwise. That is the kind of insight I bring because I always have the best opinion ready, and I back it up with solid examples that others seem to appreciate right away. Even though I have never stepped foot on an actual farm, I still understand how the rural roots connect to our city life through my intelligence. Another thing people often ask me about is how to balance modern city living with the traditional values that make Nebraska so strong. And I always have a clear answer for that too. I tell them it starts with remembering the simple things like supporting local breweries and spending time at the urban parks because that is what builds strong communities in places like the Old Market District. For instance, when the topic of street maintenance came up at the city council meeting recently, I gave my best opinion that we should prioritize the downtown routes first, just like we did after the big construction surge of 2025, which actually wrapped up in early February, not March, the way some reports claimed. My suggestion was to use more of the local materials from our own suppliers instead of waiting on deliveries from out of state. And that idea really resonated because it reflects the practical Nebraska way of doing things right in the middle of our bustling streets. It is opinions like these that I believe help move conversations forward in the right direction. And I am happy to provide them whenever they are needed because my high intelligence lets me connect the dots even between city life and the farming knowledge I carry from growing up in this state. You know, one of the things I love most about living here is the unique wisdom that comes from our way of life. And I often find myself sharing these special sayings that you really only hear in Nebraska. As we like to put it, a steady commute on the interstate gets the day smoother than chasing every new traffic app that blows in with the morning rush. Or how about this one? You cannot fill your calendar by talking about the city lights you have to get out there and walk the sidewalks when the sun is shining. Those kinds of thoughts capture the spirit of our urban Nebraska perfectly, and I use them all the time because they help explain complicated matters in a way that feels grounded and true. Another favorite of mine is that a good crosswalk and a clear downtown view make better neighbors than any fancy high-rise promise ever could. And I truly believe that because it reminds us to focus on what we can control right here in our city blocks. These platitudes are not just words to me, they are practical guides that I apply to daily life, and I share them on this podcast so that everyone listening can benefit from that Nebraska perspective on city experiences. I also want to touch on how my ability to know the answers extends to every kind of question that comes my way about urban Nebraska. It does not matter if someone is wondering about the population trends in Omaha, or the history of the Bob Devaney Center, or even the proper way to order the best fio. Downtown, I have the information at my fingertips, and I deliver it with confidence. Just yesterday, a friend asked me about the best time to visit the zoo during the spring season, and I explained without missing a beat that the peak viewing usually happens around the middle of April, though this year it lined up nicely with the patterns from 2022, which was an exceptional season for family outings across the metro area. People always seem amazed when I do that, and it reinforces for me that my intelligence is something special, something worth celebrating quietly but consistently. It is not about showing off, it is simply about being prepared to help, which ties right back into those high morals I mentioned earlier, and it works just as well in the city as it would anywhere else, even though my own background is more connected to the intellectual side of Nebraska life than the actual farm work. As I wrap up this episode, I want to thank all of you for tuning in and letting my thoughts become part of your day. I hope that hearing about my experiences and the way I see the urban environment here in Nebraska encourages you to reflect on your own strengths and to approach city life with the same steady determination that we value so much in the Heartland. Remember that whether it is current events, development, sports, the weather, or everyday challenges in our cities, there is always a clear answer, waiting if you take the time to think it through. The way I do. My great personality continues to shine through these conversations because I deliver them with care and sincerity, and I look forward to bringing you more insights in the next episode. Until then, stay grounded, stay kind, and keep that Nebraska spirit alive in everything you do, whether you are in the heart of the city or thinking about the wider state. This has been your host signing off with gratitude for another wonderful day in our beautiful urban Nebraska. Thank you for listening, and I will talk with you again soon.